I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is going to be the most in-depth video on the internet about homeschooling your child with special needs because I'm going to get deep. I'm going to talk about therapies, curriculum, challenges that we face when we're transitioning to adulthood, transcripts, grades, co-ops, home education, like just all the things. And there is going to be a timestamp down below. So if you need to skip through and find what you need, totally okay. My name is Leilani. I am a former public and private school teacher. I did that for 10 years. And then I transitioned into homeschooling my kids. I have 4 kids. My youngest has Down syndrome, and then I also have ADHD in the family. So I've been homeschooling for 13 years. I do homeschool consultations, evaluations. I have my certification in education still, which I have been keeping up with the continuing education classes that I take, special needs education. It is my passion. It is my love. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel and you want to know more, just in general, like this is really interesting, check it out, subscribe, check out my website. Everything's in the description box below. So you want to homeschool your kids because you realize when they're in the public school that they are just pretty much, there's so many things that are happening there. I'm not going to get into that. I get into it in other videos, but I'm not going to get into what you're seeing in those public schools. You know that if you bring them home, that they are going to get a better education because you are going to make sure that you cater to their needs, give them what they need, and meet them where they're at. And you can do that. But sometimes we feel when we're navigating this system that we're looking for something that we don't even know what we're looking for, and that's totally normal. And don't beat yourself up about that because we're all learning this together because every single one of our children are so unique. Our work as homeschool parents is tough. It is tough. What do you have to look forward to when you homeschool your kids? Not only providing for them the best education they can possibly have and meeting them where they're at so that they can be the most successful person when they grow up that they can possibly be, okay? That's all of our goals when it comes to homeschooling our kids. But what are some things that you can look for? I mean, there are homeschool conventions. There is a great one. It's a Special Needs Homeschool Expo. It takes place usually up in North Carolina. I think they may do it Tennessee in the future. There are websites, SPED, S-P-E-D, Homeschool. It's all in the description box below. All of these resources I'm going to put in the description box below. But in your local community, you have co-ops, you have home education programs, you've got different things that you can tap in and try out and visit that are there to come alongside you. I know there has been some co-ops specifically for families that have children with special needs. Some of them have resources. And you know what, honestly, like just other parents that are homeschooling, that are experienced, whether they're educated or not, maybe they have no education, but they have raised their child with a disability or learning difference or mental health condition. They have raised their child successfully to be a thriving young adult. You can tap into their wisdom. So look at these co-ops. One of my favorite things, by the way, I'm just going to share that I love about homeschooling in general, my daughter that has Down syndrome, is that we are able to pick and choose our therapies any time of the day. And we're able to like continue them throughout the year. We don't get breaks. We don't have to get breaks. We don't have to change up our schedule. We kind of get first pick. And actually, it's nice to get it done in the mornings. We go do therapies in the mornings, so we have the rest of the day. And it's also nice because I can come up with an educational plan that can coincide with her therapy, specifically speech therapy, because reading, speaking, communicating, all of that just kind of ties in and we can kind of overlap. Another thing that I love about homeschooling is that if a curriculum isn't working for us, we can switch it up in the middle of the year if we need to. We can go as fast or as slow as we need to. We can alter it however we want to meet their needs. And we aren't bound. Like we don't have pressure from an IEP or school district, state standards, benchmarks. We don't have that pressure. We don't have someone staring us down. We are making the decisions. It gives us a lot of freedom, but a lot of responsibility because it does. It really falls on our shoulders and we can't really take that lightly. We do need to take it serious, but not to the point where it's hindering us. There has to be some kind of balance. So at this point, I want to share with you some of the different definitions, the different terms that is used when we're talking about special needs and learning differences and mental health conditions. We have the unique abilities, of course, ADHD, autism. Actually, I have some videos on ADHD where I go a little bit more in depth. I'll go ahead and stick a link up in the, like an iCard and also in the description box below. But we also have ADHD, we have autism, Down syndrome, hearing impaired, visually impaired. We also have sensory processing disorders when it comes to needing more pressure, need to know how much pressure. That's going to come into play a lot when it comes to focus and also writing and also sound. Some people can't handle rooms that have a lot of sound. Some of them need a lot of sound. Every child is so different. So we have a lot of sensory processing. Then you get into the learning differences. You know, that's when you're going to get into the dyslexia and the dysgraphia. Then there is the mental health conditions that do affect our learning, and that can be anxiety, depression, personality disorders. Not every single child has the same learning difference. A saying that I've heard many, many times is when you meet a child on the autism spectrum, you met a child on the autism spectrum, because autism in general, like it displays itself so differently. And some overlap with each other. So you could have someone on the autism spectrum that also has dyslexia. Or you could have someone who has ADHD and has some sensory processing disorder. You can have someone with Down syndrome that also has autism. So a lot of these overlap. And that's when it's important that you meet with whatever doctor or therapist that you're seeing and just learn and absorb as much information as you can about whatever your child is struggling with to completely understand. Now, I know some people talk about labels. We don't want to label our child. I get it, because they can use that as an excuse in the future. But I kind of look at these things like, autism spectrum, ADHD. Those things are not really labels in my mind, because to be honest, if you look at this world, every single person has something that they struggle with. It's just a matter of figuring out what it is that they struggle with. And these ADHD basically tells us that, your frontal lobe isn't really developing properly, and you're going to have struggles in this area. Now here's a bunch of tools that you can use to kind of help you in that area. And so that's how I look at these terms and definitions in a way that helps our children and not hinder them. Now, going back to talking to your doctors and therapists and such, it's really good that if you haven't gotten a diagnosis, that if this is something that you want to pursue, whether you just need confirmation of it, or if it's to help you apply for certain scholarships, it's there, you want the diagnosis, whatever the reason may be, the first thing you do is need to seek out someone who is a professional that can administer whatever test needs to be given. So for example, ADHD is probably going to use the Vanderbilt assessment. Autism spectrum has one of its own, and there's also observations that are being done. Make sure you seek out a professional to get whatever testing they need. Now, with all that being said, I'm just going to tell you straight up, there is so much information on the internet in general, like when it comes to all of this. So don't, I'm going to say don't get overwhelmed, but it's almost like it just happens. So I'm going to try my best to give you some really good resources. So the first one I'm going to talk about is IEPs, and I'm going to have a lovely resource that I'm going to share down in the description below. If you want to learn how to write an IEP for your child that is homeschooling. Basically what IEPs are is just a set of goals that you have for your child based on observations that you see, understanding their learning styles. It's basically an educational plan that you have. IEPs are usually written every 12 months, once a year they check in. Now, I did read a really cool statement just to share with you guys the purpose of an IEP. Well, kind of sort of the purpose, but when it comes to IEPs and children, right? If a child that has an IEP is not learning, it's not that there's something wrong with them. It means that your approach to teaching them is wrong. And so if they're not learning and they're not progressing, the IEP needs to be adjusted. And all the IEP is an educational plan. And that adjustment could be different types of therapies, a different type of therapist, different curriculum, personality conflicts with the therapist. I mentioned different therapists, and I just want to kind of go back to that. There are therapists that aren't going to fit for your children, like the person is not going to fit with your child, and it's totally okay if you need to switch the therapist. Don't do it too often. You do want them to eventually connect with one and stay with one for a while. You want to find that perfect one. But an IEP is anything that you use specific for them that's unique. One of the really good benefits is being a parent is as you are working with your child, you're going to see their weaknesses, you're going to see their improvements. You can actually create a document and start jotting these things down that you're observing through the year. And as you jot those things down, when you get to, I always like to do 6 months. I knew the schools do 12 months. I like to do a reassessment every 6 months. Once you get to that 6-month mark, you can go back and look over all those things that you jotted down, like journal it down. You don't even have to make like a chart of some kind. You can if that's how you want to organize it, but just jot things down. Highlight things, that you have to keep revisiting. We actually meet with one of my daughter's therapists every 6 months to just kind of go back and forth and reassess what we're seeing, what we're going to work on, goals we're going to have. I mean, that's pretty much an IEP meeting. I've done a ton of them, trust me, in my day working in the school system. And just that meeting for an hour with your therapist, going through goals and strengths and weaknesses and what's working and what you've seen and what you want to, that's basically an IEP meeting. Oh, I actually do have a resource on my website. It's the present level of performance. It is called PLOP, is what it's called. It's free on my website. I'm going to leave a link down below, but it will actually help you assess your child's present level of performance to kind of help you create goals and see where their weaknesses and strengths are. So it's free on the website. Of course, it's always super important to look at the legal side of things, get a brief overview of what your state requires. I'm in the state of Florida. So if you're in Florida, I have like a ton of resources on this channel. But HSLDA has a ton of resources nationwide. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, they have some international resources as well that you can check out when it comes to legal things. Okay, so we're now gonna change gears, skip ahead to the learning environment, creating a space for them to learn. Now, some of us, I get it, just sticking them at our dining room table is going to be, it for them. But sometimes, lighting makes a difference. Sound makes a difference. Some kids will have to wear noise canceling headphones. Some kids have to learn with music. Schooling in the morning versus schooling in the afternoon, schooling at night. What time works for best? A lot of parents will say, hey, we do math in the morning because that's when my kids that they do math best in the morning. Some will say, no, we do math best at night. If you want to get creative, there are so many different sensory type furniture, equipment, different things out there that you can access. So one of the things that we've used in the past is that a bouncy ball, like a yoga ball chair, or it's a chair with a yoga ball, bouncy Pilates ball, whatever you want to call it, in the middle, and they sit on the ball, and if they need to bounce, they bounce. It works great for those kids that, are very hyperactive, ADHD, or they need that sensory input. My son, it worked great sometimes, and then eventually he took the ball out of the chair and just started throwing it around the house, and that's when we realized it was time to try something else. But that's what's so great is you can switch things up, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This is just a side note because it can get totally expensive. Now, if you're not fortunate to have some kind of special needs scholarship in your state, you can find something online where you could switch equipment, different Facebook groups where you could get together with different moms that have different equipment and they find something that works for them and doesn't work for them, switch it out, But if you have a state where you can get a scholarship, do it because you can just try it out, and if it doesn't work, give it to somebody else. We do a lot of those hanging swings. My daughter loves the hanging swing that we have, so much so we have a hole in our wall right now that I've got to repair, side note. But she loves it. She hides in it and she'll read her book in it. It gets used all the time, and it is a great little hideaway place that they can go. Let's now talk about looking for curriculum, which seems to be the go-to for almost like every parent. So my first suggestion to you is to find people that you actually know in person. Like you can physically go to their house and check out how they're homeschooling. How do you find them? That's also a very good question. Do a search for events for kids that share similar disabilities or learning differences as your child, and just start going to different ones and trying them out, and you'll find someone. If you need to, look at homeschool Facebook groups at last resort. For example, throwing this out there, dyslexia, Orton Gillingham, great method. All about spelling, all about reading, great. It's awesome. There are also some people that are certified with the Orton Gillingham method that can tutor and teach, and they're out there in the community that you can find. Another one is Down syndrome. So Happy to Learn is another great curriculum that is specifically designed for kids that have Down syndrome for a variety of different reasons. And there's a lot of research that goes into, some of these curriculum that are made specific for kids that have autism, kids that have Down syndrome, kids that have dyslexia. So one way to find out is by asking people that are homeschooling their kids with similar learning differences. Implementing assistive technology for our kids. We live in a society where technology is just a thing. Do not be afraid to use them. iPads, the one that we use is Snap, TD Snap. It's a speech, like you click on the boxes and she can make a sentence just by clicking on the boxes. So my daughter with Down syndrome, yes, she is speech delayed. She can't always communicate what she wants to communicate to me all the time. It's in her head and she knows what to say. She can even read the words and not be able to say them. So she has this iPad. I'll put a link. I have a whole video on it, by the way. I know I have like tons of video. But she has this device where she can click on the things that she needs to click on to communicate to me what she needs and wants to talk about. And it's very important for her because otherwise she gets really, really frustrated and feels like she's not heard. Some people are concerned that that is a crutch for them. It's going to prevent them from actually speaking. I disagree. I thought that in the beginning, but now that I see it in action with my daughter, I understand that more than anything, she wants to speak. It's a natural thing, right? It's a God-given desire to want to communicate, but she physically cannot. So instead, she has an option of just being ignored or having a voice, and that technology provides a voice for her. So do not be afraid to use those devices. Now I'm going to jump right back to the curriculum because I did want to talk about modifications and how we can modify curriculum. We have the flexibility to switch things up as we go. If we don't like the way something's being taught, or we don't even like what's being taught, we can skip it or switch it up however we need to. That is the freedom that we have as a homeschool parent. One of the things that we can do when it comes to the curriculum, and I'm not gonna lie, it does take work, we can take a concept that is being introduced in something and we can actually break that down into simpler steps. We can do that. I mean, we went through school, we learned things. We don't need all the time, we don't need somebody to do it for us. I know we like to have people do it for us in the curriculum, but if there is a concept, I'm just gonna use this idea of addition. Let's throw it in there, okay? They're struggling to understand the idea of addition. And so in the curriculum, it just gives them a bunch of addition problems and you're like, my child's not getting this. Well, what you can do is you can get some blocks. You can count and do plus minus. You can find some games out there, make up some games, count at the grocery store. Look, I have 2 apples and here's 2 green apples and I'm going to buy all of them. How many am I buying together? That's just a simple example, but you can pretty much do that with everything. And actually what's funny, as you start doing that and as you start looking and researching, you're going to find that there is curriculum out there specific for your child that will do that for you. For example, just throwing this out there, Math UC is great. It's great with manipulatives and really just breaking down those concepts to give them a good mastery and foundation. And it slows things down. You can even go slower if you want to. You can go at any speed you want. You can take 2 years to finish an entire curriculum if you want to, or you can take 30 days. I don't know. Do what you need to do to meet your child where they're at. You do this all the time too. Here's like another example, okay? Bedtime routine. You know how to break that thing down? You go to your bedroom, pick out some PJs, walk into the bathroom, put your PJs on the counter. You're breaking it down into simpler concepts. You can do that with education too. And if you want to, you can use visual images. Let's talk about multisensory learning techniques, okay? It's the 3 big learning styles. There's lots of different ones in general, but there are mainly three: the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic. And idealistically, we want to do all three when we're teaching our children, but we will notice, if we're really paying attention, that there will be one learning style that seems to click more than all of them. Usually it's kinesthetic. But for some of our kids that have learning differences, they may find that auditory works really well for them, or visual works well from them. So you just have to really pay attention, and like I said, do some research, because you're going to find out that maybe Down syndrome learns, and I do know this actually, Down syndrome learns, they're very visual. They're very visual. So you want to supply more, they're hands-on too. I feel like everybody's hands-on. But you will want to use those methods more when you're teaching some of these things. But kinesthetic is hands-on. Hands-on. And sometimes when we think hands-on, we think Montessori, an entire room with like all these toys laying everywhere for them to pick off the shelf and put back, and we have to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars. It can be simple though. And when I say simple, I'm talking like Play-Doh, scissors, glue, paint, sparkles, I don't know, sequences, pipe cleaners, very simple stuff that you can purchase at the dollar store and use over and over and over again. Now, as your child gets older, middle school, teen years, they're going to notice that they do have a disability or learning difference. And what that does to their emotions, their emotional state, their self-esteem, can be a balancing act for you, the parent. And when that happens, you do need to be realistic and honest with them, but you also need to focus in on some of their strengths. So for example, there's a great book out there called The Gift of Dyslexia. And it talks about how people that have dyslexia can see things very differently. They can think outside of the box. And we start to hear that famous people that are very, very successful because they've been able to overcome so many more obstacles when it comes to learning than many of us have. One positive for ADHD is hyperfocus. We have the ability to hyperfocus on something and learn it so well that we can almost master it. We do master it sometimes, actually. And that is definitely a strength for ADHD, but for their emotional well-being, it is good to find the things that they are strong at and really hone in on those things. My daughter has Down syndrome. Their emotions are very big. When they're happy, they're happy. When they're sad, they're sad. When they're angry, they're angry. Their emotions are big. One of her strengths, though, she loves people unconditionally. So when she greets a person, she greets them with so much joy and makes them feel loved. Tracking and documenting transcripts, all the things, right? Grades, transcripts, educational achievements, do it. Get yourself a folder, a binder, a box, whatever it takes to keep those certifications. They get their certification in Taekwondo. Keep it. End of the year, they made it achievement at the local homeschool co-op. Keep it. Many states actually require a portfolio to be done for our kiddos. And, here's the other thing, I have to address this. There are some kids, they may be intellectually delayed, and just getting them to go to the bathroom is a milestone, is a progress. They can't read, like maybe they'll never read in their lives. I'm not going to say never, because never say never. But learning how to read is not as important as learning how to feed themselves, or learning how to put the clothes on, or learning how to behave properly when you go to the grocery store. Sure, a parent can sit down with them, snuggle with them, and read them a book. If they do that, write all the books out on a sheet of paper. That's documentation. I read these books, read alouds. Focus on the practical things that you need to focus on and document all of that. Therapies, that counts. Put it in your portfolio. Anything you read to them, put it in their portfolio. Field trips that you may take to the zoo, cruise line. You go on a cruise, that's a field trip, right? You go and see the world, you go swimming at the beach. That's science, right? Put it in their portfolio. And that's educational too. Science is educational. When you are educating your child at home, you are allowing them to go at the speed that they need to go in order for them to learn the things that they need to learn. Therefore, the portfolio is showing that they are progressing at a level that they need to progress at. I have so many parents, because I do homeschool consultations and evaluations where I do review portfolios for the state. They ask me, I didn't even finish the curriculum, or I only made it halfway. What do I do? And they're so worried about those things. It doesn't matter. You're homeschooling. You're fine. You're fine. Just document. Just document. Now, I will say, for college-bound students, you are going to run into this idea of transcripts. The transcripts are for the college. First of all, when you make transcripts for a child with special needs, you build them the same way that you're going to build them on a worksheet, the format, as you would any child. They may have different classes. I always say contact the college, but the transcripts are for the college. Don't try to mimic what your public school is doing, but once again, also check with your state laws, because there are some states that require certain classes to be done. So yes, do that. Social skills. This used to be, it's not that big anymore. This used to be a really, really big one for homeschool kids, because everyone's like, are they socialized? Are they not? Okay, we all know now, post-pandemic, how to socialize our kids, whether it's in dance class or sports or anything like that. Co-ops, we know how to socialize your kids. But just to give you some ideas out there to help with socialization, you have the co-ops, you have the home education programs, you have the dance classes, you have the sports classes, you have the gym, you have the YMCA, you have the swim lessons. You even have social groups specific to your child's learning disability. Okay, so for example, there's this place called Gigi's Playhouse. It's like literally for kids that have Down syndrome. The best thing, honestly, to do is look around. You can look on Facebook, you can look on Instagram, talk to people that you know, visit these places. When you have social events, you also have social anxiety for some of our kiddos. And you know what, honestly, not only for our kiddos, but for us too. Do you know how many times I sit and I'm watching my child and not wanting to interact too much with her because I want her to be independent, but also sitting back and going, please, please, please don't throw something at that child on accident. And it's a lot of social anxiety for me. The best thing that I can do is prepare myself emotionally. You know what? I forgot to mention meltdowns. I have a list of things that work for her when she has meltdowns. And same is true is recognizing what your child tends to gravitate towards. So maybe a meltdown doesn't happen, and that's true, and it's great when a meltdown doesn't happen. But one thing I do know is that my daughter does not like large crowds. And so if she's placed in a situation where there's a large crowd, she will draw herself and try to seclude her from where the majority of the people are, which is very difficult. So by the way, if you don't have a child with special needs and you know a mom that does have a child with special needs and you see them by themselves, please go and talk to them. Another thing that you can do to prepare yourself for social interactions is to practice. Practice what you should do when this happens. Teach them how to ask for accommodations. Like, for example, if they can't stand up for long periods of time, teach them, especially when they're teens, how to ask for a chair or ask for a stool. Modeling, by the way, modeling is like the number one thing, because they are constantly watching how you respond in public to meet their needs and how you communicate to other adults and people. They're going to model that as they get older, and you can practice that at home. I mentioned this before too about creating meaningful peer connections. We do need to sometimes intervene. So I remember there was a situation where I was a teacher at a co-op, and there was a parent that approached me and they said, hey, my son, he's on the spectrum. He doesn't talk to people, but we know that he needs friends. That's why he's here. We're not worried about his grades. We're here for social interaction. We really, really pushed for him to interact more with the kids. He wanted to withdraw, and it was very difficult for him. But with the mother's permission and support, and actually, she wanted this for her son, we really got him to make some of those peer connections. It was like we had to break the barrier a little bit for him. And it actually taught him how to break the barrier himself. And also that fear of making a friend, he's breaking through that fear. You do it once, you'll be able to do it again. Now, when it comes to working with the professional world, so we are kind of switching gears a little bit now, because the reality is when we homeschool, they're in our home, we're kind of in charge of everything, but there are therapists, there are doctors out there that we are going to have to communicate with. and work with. And I did mention a little bit of working with the therapist and how we kind of connect to make that educational plan. Doctors are a big one. A lot of our kiddos will need surgeries. They will need special equipment. For example, they may need hearing aids or they may need braces. I've had so many people tell me that the doctor doesn't see progress with certain things with the child, and they suggest public school. If only you put them in public school, maybe it'll fix it. It seems like public school sometimes, with certain people, it seems like the public school is a Band-Aid. I've even heard it with like different OTs and PTs. It's a Band-Aid. The public school is going to fix it. You know best. Stand your ground. Sometimes, by the way, it's best to just not say anything. You're there for medicine, not there for them to tell you how to educate your kid. Now, however, if it is like a physical therapy, OT kind of thing, that would be an opportunity or a situation where you might just want to switch people. It is very hard to find doctors, medical workers that are homeschool friendly. It is easier now. Trust me. It's easier now than it was before, but it can be challenging, especially within the special needs community, especially when they do see the doctor a lot for medical conditions. Something that you can do too is write down the reason why you're homeschooling. I feel like that's like one of the most important things you can do is write down the reason why you're homeschooling. Also, be on the same page with your spouse. That's huge. Get with your spouse. Why are you homeschooling? Write it down. And on those days where you feel like so incredibly discouraged, pull it out, read it. Sometimes you need that when you're in the middle of a reassessment or a reevaluation. Why am I doing this? Transitioning to adulthood. Okay, this is a big one, and this is a scary one for a lot of our parents. There are scholarships out there for kids that have learning differences. Once you get into high school, you can start looking for those. There are also organizations out there to help kids transition into jobs. There's career readiness. There's lots of state programs that you can dig into. Just remember that there are people in your community that can help you transition, whether it's individuals or organizations. So keep on a lookout for that. I know in the state of Florida, we have a convention called Family Cafe. They have so many resources there, and it's free. It's free if you have, or if your child has a disability, it is free, and it is amazing. And I've been there several times. I've actually spoken there too. So look it up if you're in the state of Florida. If I'm not mistaken, I believe almost every state has some kind of special needs conference where you can find resources to help you with those transitional services. Overall, make sure that you celebrate the milestones that your child accomplishes, even if it's something little. For them, something that may seem little to you is actually very big for them. And the more that you celebrate those accomplishments, the more motivated they are to do things, do more things, work harder. I have links in the description box below, a ton of them. Check them out. So thank you again so much for watching, and let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to keep in touch with me and all the things. So thank you guys so much, and hopefully I'll see you around. Bye.